director of the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange, and I'm the lucky person who gets to stand up here and thank a lot of incredible people and partners. So I'm going to start with our local host committee members that are present, and the chair of our committee, Emma Mariner, and our steering committee, Morehead liaison, Tyler McDaniel. So if you are Emma, Tyler, or a local host committee member, would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you so much for everything you poured into this weekend. It's really an honor to be back in this community. We're so excited to go further than we got to last year and to learn more about this really special place, but also to learn about how the community is growing and changing in the time. So thank you for hosting us and sticking with us for a second year, really third year if you count the first network weekend. It's been a long run. And it wouldn't be possible without all of you and without our amazing partners and sponsors here. So please join me in thanking tonight's sponsors, Morehead Rowan County Tourism, and Rux's funding partners, Art of the Rural, the Kentucky Arts Council, the Greater Clark Foundation, and the Snowy Owl Foundation. And last but not least, a special thanks to the Arts Center for letting us use this space, and to our panelist, moderator, and the chefs at Fodder that prepared the meal we're about to enjoy. Before I introduce the person who will introduce the food, I'm gonna just give you all a little bit of instruction. So what's about to happen is I'm gonna invite a city councilwoman up here. She's going to talk a little bit, welcome you all, talk a little bit about this space and about where we are here in Morehead. And then she'll introduce or call up Jenny Williams. Y'all already know and love Jenny. And Jenny's going to host a little mini narrative stage on Appalachian foodways before we go through for dinner. Now when we do go through the line, in case somebody forgets to say it later, panelists and host committee members, y'all go first, please. I know it's not your way, but we insist. Go first. And then following them, folks with dietary restrictions, please go on through. And then everybody else can fall in. And just a reminder, we will do our reset work groups at 5:45, and we'll let you know when that is. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and welcome, wait, is Amy here? Yeah. Oh, I almost skipped. I'm not introducing you. Amy is. I didn't see you. Sorry, y'all. It's already been a long day. Well, it's my joy to introduce Amy Richardson. Come on up here.
We're delighted to host the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange's Community Intensive here in Rowan County for a second year. It's been such a pleasure to be on the host committee and talking about all of the wonderful things that you all are going to do this weekend. This gives us an opportunity to dive deeper and continue to share more about our community and its people. A few bits of housekeeping. If you all need bathrooms, if you haven't already figured that out, the men's room is right outside this door to the left. And the ladies' room is down on the first floor. When you walk in the front of the building, there's like a little admin desk there, and the restroom is right beside it. I forgot what office it used to be, but I think there's a placard on there that says, because this was the old courthouse, it says what that office used to be, which is kind of cool. I would like to remind everyone to please silence your phones during our program tonight. So if you haven't already done that, please make sure to turn off the ringer, turn on the silence. And I'd like to share a little bit more information about how special this Arts Center is. This building was used as a courthouse in 1899 and became the home of the Rowan County Arts Center in 2003, thanks to the support of local organizations and the Lucille Cotto Little Foundation. It is currently funded and supported by the Morehead Rowan County Tourism and Rowan County government with additional grant-funded support as the opportunities arise. The Arts Center offers year-round exhibitions, classes, workshops, performances, literary programs, and youth opportunities designed to engage, educate, and inspire. From visual and performing arts to writing and traditional music, our programs reflect both the creative spirit of our region and the diverse voices of our community. This is especially near to my heart because the center hosts youth programming like the Bloodroot Writers Collective, which is a group of young writers ages 12 to 17 that build their writing skills over the course of the year through place-based storytelling. I founded Bloodroot in 2025 with six young writers and the support of a Rux microgrant. This program was inspired by Ironwood Writers Studio, a teen writers workshop founded by Melissa Jorgenrud-Helton and modeled after the Appalachian Writers Workshop at Heinlein Settlement School. Bloodroot is now funded by the James Baker Hall Foundation and is flourishing as we prepare to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. Thank you. I'm very excited about that. We also just wrapped up our first week-long summer writer studio for teens at 4 o'clock today, and it took place here. It's been such a wonderful week, and I'd love to talk more about that with y'all later if anyone wants to hear me gush about these wonderful young people in my community. And some of those artists are here with us today, but I was just informed they're outside on the steps eating their pizza. In addition to the year-round programming here, the Arts Center also helps plan, coordinate, and support annual local festivals like the Arts and Eats Festival coming up in September, and our inaugural Appalachian Literary Arts Festival with Coffee Tree Books that will take place this last weekend of August. So if you all don't have plans, the last weekend of August, we're going to have so much going on here in Morehead. Even with this Arts Center in our community, it still feels rare that we can come together and talk about the arts on this scale with this platform. So we're really excited for tonight's conversation. Now I'd love to invite one of our elected city council members, Yvonne Baldwin, to come forward.
It's lovely to see you all as I'm standing in for Mayor Laura White-Brown. She has big shoes to fill. She's a brilliant woman and she's been a wonderful mayor and will continue to be so for the next few months. I serve on the city council. I'm toward the end of my second term. I serve with Edna Shack, and Edna Shack is currently a candidate for mayor. And so I will put in a good word for Edna. She's a good one. But before I wander too far, I will say I'm a retired history professor, but I'm also an artist. And I have painted for many, many years and loved it and enjoyed it. And years ago, when we wanted to turn the old courthouse into what it currently is, I was working with lots of folks to try to make that happen, writing grants, talking to everyone that we could, and a lot of times the answer that politicians give is, oh, that would be so nice. And you're like, yeah, well, it would. What can you do to help us make that happen? Morehead is a beautiful small town, and it has a heart for the arts. And that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about it myself. I'm a mountain girl. I grew up in the mountains in North Carolina, and I know how important the arts are. They're a way to transmit our culture. They're a way to hold on to our folkways and our traditions. I wrote the book on Cora Wilson Stewart, a literacy pioneer who started the Moonlight Schools here. And one big example of her contribution to the arts was that she put together panels to demonstrate Appalachian folkways, the arts that they engaged in, the hand-woven details of their looms and the art that they made, both visual art and music. So I'm a huge supporter and a huge fan, and I love the fact that Morehead does support the arts, and I know it will continue to do so. So on behalf of a wonderful community, I welcome you all, and I'm thankful that you're here. I hope your conference is wonderful. I'm sure it will be. I've read online about the rucks, and so when I came in and they said, "Are you here for the rucks too?" I knew what that was. Despite the fact that I'm so old at the stage of decrepitude, I have to be helped up steps. You know, this kind of still does work most of the time. But welcome, enjoy. I know that Jenny's going to do a wonderful job of getting people up here, and somebody's going to help me get down. So
I guess we'll have to share the microphone, and you're considerably taller than me, so.
I promise you I don't need one. I project real well. I won't have any issues hearing me.
So I'm Jenny Williams. I was in the very first Rux cohort because Savannah Barrett mistook me for a chef. I'm not a chef.
Yes, you are.
But I do love to eat food, and it's very important to me. So I want to introduce to you Brittany Steele. She is the executive chef at MSU here at Morehead State University and the chef for the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you want the dish on Travis's engagement and wedding, she's your girl when she gets back from training camp. Brittany was honored by the International Fresh Produce Association with the 2025 Produce Excellence in Food Service Award for her innovation, creativity, and excellence in using fresh produce. She has appeared on Hell's Kitchen and Chopped, and if the snacks that we at Rux served are any indication, the students at MSU are eating real well. Mm-hmm. So we're going to just talk a little bit about Appalachian food, and we are going to start out with a lightning round where I'm going to ask really quick questions to Brittany, and she's going to answer them super quick. So, like 30 seconds. Are you ready?
Oh, God.
Is everybody ready?
It's just so everyone knows.
That's for the whole thing. Also, can you smell that food? We can't keep these people from eating it.
I know, Jake is here somewhere. I don't know where he is, but he gets all the credit for this. This is all fodder. This was
Where is
not-
Jake? Where is Jake?
Where is Jake?
Oh, well.
He's busy.
Still, it smells good. We'll talk more about fodder in a minute. Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
All right, quick. What drives you to feed people?
Well, I grew up Appalachian, so we always just fed people when they were grieving or sick or celebrating, and it was just our way of saying, you're welcome here. And I think I just brought that with me into my career. I just really love to feed and take care of people, and that's how I do it, with my food.
Awesome. So define Appalachian food.
This one already sent me because that's such a complex question, right? Like Appalachian food, how do you define that in 30 seconds? Crazy.
We might do a little longer.
But it's seasonal, right? And it's resourceful, and it's what you're getting from your garden during the summer and what your neighbor down the hall shares with you, and what you're able to hunt for or fish for or forage. So in the spring, you're looking at morels, you're looking at ramps, and in the summer, you're looking at tomatoes and beans and corn and berries, and it's just a really amazing time of the year for us. So I really hope you guys are enjoying Eastern Kentucky.
That was beautiful. What's your go-to comfort meal?
I really like to think that I'm a chef that will intentionally challenge the expectations of Appalachian food. So I think that people come and visit us and they're expecting fried foods and heavy foods, and we're just so much more than that, right? So I think that I'd probably fix creamy stone grits, right? A little smoked trout, some hand-roasted vegetables, whatever's in season, cornbread or a cathead biscuit, because I'm a cathead biscuit girl myself, and pop panna cotta to finish up with. Yeah.
You're speaking my language now with the pop. So here's a little bit more in-depth question for you. How have you seen the perceptions and executions of Appalachian food change, both inside the region, outside the region, and in your own work over the past?
This one they told me I had a little longer, so I had notes to keep
Go
myself
ahead.
in line, okay? Because I will ramble about this for hours, not kidding. So for us here in Appalachia, I just really feel like there's been a lot of transformative growth happening, right? We're seeing chefs coming into the field now that are actually paying homage to the traditions instead of hiding it like what we used to. We're proud of who we are and where we came from, and we're showing respect to the ingredients now, which is not something that I grew up with, unfortunately. So all those changes that I'm getting to see on a daily basis, I get to take that into my job on campus and introduce the college students to Appalachian flavors that most of them, let's face it, have grown up with, but a few of my little California babies may have never heard of these foods before. So it's really intentional. I'm really able to take things that I grew up loving, and approach it in a way that a young adult may be able to try it without it being something scary, or without it being something they're gonna like snub their nose to, you know? Like I said, I'll just keep talking. I just started very little on my own here. I just really love incorporating fresh local produce. Won the award for it last year. Never in my life thought that would happen. What a weird thing to win an award for, right? That you're taking local produce and just feeding it to kids, to young adults. So that's just such a wild concept. They're like awarding people awards for this, when this is just something that we should be doing every day in every aspect. Whether it's right now in the summer, we're getting it fresh, and then we're preserving it, and we're carrying that into the fall and the winter. These are all aspects that I bring to campus with an amazing team of people. Y'all should really come visit us. We're at the Rock by Eagle Lake. I keep going. I just keep going. We're taking these elements every day and showing students, like last semester I was teaching students how to pickle. So we're taking vegetables that are on their last life in my shelf that I'm getting from, you know, a farm down the road, and I'm showing them that like I can give them a longer life by pickling them and turning it into something that maybe they wouldn't have thought to use in their salads.
I've met some of you today, but some of you are new to me. I am the executive staff advisor at the Kentucky Arts Council, and the Kentucky Arts Council and Kentucky Rucks have enjoyed a more than decade-long partnership at this point, and we really believe in the work that Rucks does. We believe that the arts are a way of doing a great many things, including community cohesiveness and a way for us all to connect. And so I just want to thank Rucks for letting me continue to come back and, you know, let Mamaw say a few words and talk a little bit about the value of the arts in communities. So part of my role at the Kentucky Arts Council is to educate policymakers about why the arts matter in Kentucky. And this generally involves aggregating a lot of data, making maps, tallying impact, and memorizing all these numbers that are associated with the way that the arts change lives. And these are really hard-fought justifications at a time when public support for the arts may not feel like a priority. You know, all of these nonprofit sectors are in a lot of competition for a few dollars, and frankly, there are some very essential services that are at stake. And you know, I can understand that feeling, but I do this work because I believe that the arts are, it's the key manifestation of our values, and is basically our identity as Kentuckians. I always say it's the boiled down juice of us. It's inextricable from who we are, our environment, our work, our family lives. All of those things are really, you know, part and parcel to the arts. You know, I was really hearing what you were saying about how tied our identity is to these art forms, and the way that we are really tasked with conserving our traditions by investing in the arts. Creativity is a resource that can be harnessed. It can even be exploited, but you're never going to fully control it. So you can't even starve it out. You know, left with nothing but a pile of rubble, an artist is just going to grind those rocks into mineral pigments, right? So, but if vibes like that don't get you, you really want to hear the brass tacks. It's important to note that we add $7 billion to the economy of Kentucky through arts and cultural production. We employ, we employ 51,094 workers, and there are many folks in this room right now that represent what I see as small businesses. Just, you know, like any other small business, whether you're a contractor, a lawyer, whatever part of your community, you are contributing to that economic impact. But more importantly, we're part of what makes the Commonwealth worth living in, raising our kids in, and fighting for, frankly. Strong, cohesive arts communities are essential to that vibrancy. And so it's my pleasure today to introduce you to the moderator of today's panel, who will then introduce you to those panelists. Dr. Denise Watkins, who is in her 26th year of teaching in the MSU Theatre program. She's worked on more than 100 theater productions, including those at the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company and the Lexington Children's Theater, a place that's near and dear to my heart. And while at MSU, Dr. Watkins created the first, and still only, theater education certification program in Kentucky. Beyond being faculty, she's a proud Eagle alum and holds an MFA from Michigan State and a PhD in interdisciplinary humanities. In this community, she has coached a 3-time award-winning Rowan County High School speech team. She lives here with her husband Cecil, and they have one son who is the national champion of extemporaneous speaking at the American Forensic Association National Tournament. I think that's a powerful family legacy backed by some really hard work for sure. So when we were just speaking a minute ago, she confessed, she goes, oh, you can condense down my bio a little bit. You can tell though that I'm somebody that really wants to talk about my family. And I was like, absolutely, I read right between those lines. Let's bring up your son. Let's talk about him. So I want to welcome to the stage Dr. Watkins and the panelists for this community conversation.
So I'm going to introduce the panelists for our conversation here on arts in rural communities. Our first panelist is Patrick Johnson. Patrick is an instructor at MSU. He's been there for 15 years teaching creative writing and other introductory English courses. And he helped found and maintain the Sawstone Poets for the last 2 years. Andrew Preston is the vehicle for the music A.p. No, I said that backwards. A.p Harbor is the vehicle for the music of Andrew Preston. He is the singer and songwriter and producer from Van Lear, Kentucky. He's been a featured songwriter by the International Bluegrass Music Association, a lecture faculty for the Appalachian Writers Workshop, and a nominee for the 2020 Audioverse Awards. Ooh. His works expand hundreds of performances through 4 countries and 8 LPs. Preston and his collective of bandmates have become recognizable mainstays of Appalachia's burgeoning indie scene. He also has a book, his first one, The Hum of a Dreaming Moon. It's a great title, by the way, which was released in 2025. I imagine some of you have found the Fuzzy Duck Coffee Shop and Coffee Tree Books, where Andrew is the manager for both of those. He lives here in Morehead with his husband and 2 kitty cats. Chrissy Perkins is a Kentucky-based photographer, artist, and creative entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience using the arts to tell stories, build community, and inspire connection. She's spent her career documenting Appalachia through photography, while also creating spaces for self-expression, conversation, and personal growth through workshops, exhibits, and community events. Whether she's behind the camera or facilitating meaningful experiences, Chrissy believes the arts have the power to bring people together. And last but not least, Adrian Swain, who was raised in England and made his way to Kentucky in 1971. His plan was to study psychology, but that was hijacked when he took a ceramics class at the University of Kentucky in early 1972 and fell in with a gang of vagabond potters. He came to Morehead in 1977 as a Kentucky Arts Council artist in residence in the Rowan County schools. He was here for 2 years, settled, married up, raised a family, and never left. Encounters with several folk artists led him to being offered a part-time job as the curator of the Folk Art Museum as a curator of folk art at Morehead State University in 1987. That became a full-time role after 4 months, and under his watch, a small collection of Kentucky's self-taught artists grew rapidly, resulting in the creation of the Kentucky Folk Art Museum in 1994. He retired from the Arts Center, Kentucky Folk Arts Center, and Morehead State University in 2013, and has since returned to making strange things out of clay. So we want to get a conversation started about arts in this rural community and all rural communities in general from here. So I have a list of questions, and I will just start asking them. If you see me looking at my phone, I promise I'm not texting or Instagramming. I'm just keeping track of the time to make sure we stay on schedule. Okay, first question for the panel. How can art help people feel more connected and less isolated in rural communities?
Especially for this area, everything's physically divided, right? We're in deep hollers. We don't get to see each other a lot. And art itself is individualistic. We go and we think about these things and we work with them and we create them alone. The idea is that this experience that we have isn't singular, but we get to transcribe that into our own perspective. And what that does is when we share it with other people, those people can say, hey, they recognize that and they feel closer, even if they're not physically closer. If they're not ever going to see that person, they know that they're not alone. So that's what I think and how art can connect with us.
Yeah, I agree. And I think at the very core of it, art gives us something to talk about. I think it's a great catalyst for conversation. It diffuses awkwardness. All humans can connect on art on some level. And I think that's really especially true in Appalachia, where we've grown up around so much art and so much culture. It gives us something to break the silence and communicate about. And I really like that about art.
So I have notes because I have some memory issues and I'm dyslexic, so I thought I'd mess it up one way or another, but at least I have notes. First, I want to say thanks to Rux for having us and having the conversation about the arts, because I feel so honored to be on the stage with these people. They're amazing humans, incredibly gifted and talented, each in their own right. And you guys, like, I checked out your bios and your headshots, and you're a good-looking crew, but like, man, the talent in this room, like, once I read your all's bios, I was like, whoa, I'm pretty intimidated. So congratulations on doing your own stuff, because man, Rux picks good people, and you guys are like amazing. So this question, the very first question, I have a bit of a lengthy response because I do feel so passionately about the arts, and this question in particular. So, as an artist and a photographer for 20 years, I've noticed that there's a difference between being viewed, there we go. I'm not used to this whole, I'm just using it as a prop. There's a difference between being viewed and feeling seen, heard, and understood. And so, about 15 years ago in my career, I noticed like a shift was happening with my customers. Like, instead of being excited about their beautiful album, they were like, hey, when are you gonna post my pictures on Facebook? I was like, oh, yeah, that's what you're excited about. And it was kind of new and fresh. I'm like, okay, so people were really starting to crave feeling viewed, right? Well, over time, I began to realize our social dynamics are changing. We're becoming much more social animals digitally than we are in person. And I have a lot of concerns about that. I think that's affecting the mental health that's happening in our country right now. But yeah, so the problem with this whole, our hugs and our in-person laughter has become emojis and likes and double tapped hearts. And that makes me really sad because I feel like we're losing the essence of what makes us humans, which is our connectivity and socializing and conversations that are meaningful. So the problem with this shift that we're experiencing where our socializing is happening online instead of in person is very much, I told you it was a lengthy answer. But I promise this is my only really long, lengthy answer. But the thing is, like, when you are on social media and you get your socializing from that source, you're getting a quick dopamine hit. And it often leaves us feeling worse than good. But in contrast to that, human to human, eyeball to eyeball, human connection releases an amazing cocktail of brain chemistry that is so helpful for empathy, for compassion, for mental wellness. And that's what we're missing. And that's why we're all like left craving more, right? We're just all feeling exhausted and wore out. There's no energy to socialize, but we need that more than ever. And here's why. They told us to be really vulnerable, so I'm serving it today. 2.2 million Americans attempted suicide last year, and Kentucky has an unusually high suicide rate. We're ranked number 16 in the country, and not only that, rural communities like ours have double the suicide rate of urban communities. Double. So, one of the top reasons for suicide, social isolation. And that's where we're headed. We're all becoming more socially isolated. It's very natural with the progression of technology, right? It's just where we're at. But why I believe that this conversation about the arts is so incredibly important is because I think the arts is the bridge to better days. It's the bridge to the political divide. It's the bridge to all the opposition of us versus them in whatever category or subject matter it is. It's the most divisive time in our country's history. And the arts takes that away. It dissolves the barriers between us. It gives us, for people like me who are incredibly socially awkward and uncomfortable, having a project that we're sharing, it takes the pressure off. Like it's so much easier than if I'm just meeting Andrew for coffee and I have to like look at his eyes the whole time. You know, that requires a different amount of social courage. But when you provide the arts and we're like, hey, let's get together and do some kind of art project or make some kind of music, make some noise on a porch, it immediately makes it an easier way for people to connect. So in my humble opinion, I just feel that there's nothing that's more uniting than singing, dancing, making art, making noise together. And I think the arts are the one thing that we all need most. And I think it's underserved, I think it's underthought about, that it is truly one of the most connecting activities we can do is the arts. So I believe whatever ails you, that some form of art or self-expression, especially unfiltered, non-judgmental self-expression is the key to whatever ails us.
If I can jump in here for 1 minute, I want to say at dinner, Chrissy mentioned to me that she was a little nervous about public speaking and that she was afraid she would not have good answers. Girl, you do fine. That was lovely.
I've been involved in the arts for quite a long time, kind of just without necessarily really intending to. It just kind of happened in my life, and I value what I just heard immensely. I want to just add kind of one thing, which is that I think the arts, in some sense, serve as a mirror. What connects us to other people through, let's say, a painting, is if that painting triggers something in us that resonates with our own experience, and then we're seeing the world in a different way. We're just seeing the world just ever so slightly nuanced in a way that we hadn't seen it before, and that tells us about ourselves. And I can look at a painting, and I'll use that as the example, these three folks can look at a painting and we'll all see different things because our life experiences have been different, but we find that common ground there. So in a sense, it's like a mirror. And I know the experience of making art and presenting art and then, or being a spectator or a participant who's not a producer of it, all have different aspects, but they all kind of come together with because we look at paintings that I keep using that, but that's just candy, that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and there are still aspects in that painting or that piece of literature or that music that we're not totally comfortable with. They tweak us in a way that keeps us looking, keeps us listening, and keeps us alive.
I like what you said also. It reminded me of, it's easier for people to have conversations through metaphor. And art is like a fantastic way to do that. I mean, I'm a terribly socially awkward person, but like several of us are. But apparently, here we are talking on a stage because we're talking about art and talking about ideas in a way that are, art is vulnerable, but it also makes the vulnerableness vulnerable and easier to transmit. And I think that's a really key aspect of art.
Any other follow-ups? Go on to the next question. There's something distinct to the feeling of art from this particular region. What do you think distinguishes Appalachian art from other outsider art movements?
I think the distinction for me is that, and this will tie in with probably the rest of the discussion, but one of the things that is special about Appalachia is that we do move forward in time, we do move forward in the future, and we evolve and adapt. But we remember our history. We remember where we're from, and these hills carry a lot of history. They have teeth, and they bite us, and no matter what we do, I know that I'm guilty of it. When I came here in 2002, 100,000 years ago, I attempted to strip my accent completely, right? I believed that my Appalachian identity was not worth display. But the more that I aged, the more I realized that it had sank its teeth into me and it wasn't going away. And it's something that we carry through, and I think that the history and our history and our ability to adapt and undergo what we have creates a distinct voice. The way that we produce art and the way that we express ourselves is constrained, respectful, and also wild at the same time. It's a strange funk, and it's something that I've grown to absolutely love.
So a few years ago, I met a woman named Jocelyn McKenzie, and she is a singer-songwriter from Brooklyn, New York, and born and raised. And she was really prevalent in the DIY folk music scene, and that's how we met. And so I asked her when she came to Morehead and taught some of the kids at MSU some different things in a songwriting workshop, and I said, how did you get involved in the folk music scene? And she was touring alongside a lot of prominent Appalachian artists, this woman from New York. Her whole band was from New York. And she said, well, I never really intended to make folk music. We just made music with what we had. And I thought that was fascinating, and I thought back to my years of becoming a songwriter, becoming an artist, and I grew up in Van Lear, Kentucky, and certainly I didn't have access to a music studio at the time. I didn't have a lot of different instruments. I didn't have equipment. And so I made records with what I had available to me, which was a laptop. This was like 2008, 2009. And a laptop and an iPod and a guitar and a Walmart keyboard. And I wasn't intending to make folk music either, but that's what I made, and that's what our ancestors were doing also. They didn't set out to make Appalachian sounding music. They were just making art with what they had. And now, as an adult, with access to a studio and with technology and instruments and all these wonderful programs, it's still really important for me to use what I have to make art, because I think that's what makes Appalachian art special. It's even if we have a lot, we cherish what we have and use that to make the art.
So this question I had to stop and ask myself, like, what is the difference in Appalachian art? And so I started thinking about who were my favorite artists, and that was my first clue what the difference was. Because when you hear the word artist, you instinctively think of someone who's making their career out of art, right? And let's be honest, that's a very, very difficult thing to do in this day and age. It's nearly impossible almost. So then I was like, okay, what if I broaden the term of what I define as an artist? Like, who inspired me into art? And the first person that came to mind was my Mama Wright. So when I was a little girl, my Mama Wright's house was the safest place I could go. It was the happiest place I could go. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I realized that my Mama Wright was extremely poor. Like, I always thought she had the most beautiful floor I'd ever seen. And I didn't realize as a kid that the reason her floor was so pretty to me was because it had all these patches from like a piece of linoleum over here and a piece of cloth over there, a piece of plastic over there, because there were so many holes in the floor. And I was like, this is the most wonderful little tiny home in the whole wide world. And I never really understood the gravity of the financial situation. So my mama, she was probably the first person to introduce me into the arts, I think, because she made quilts. But she wasn't a quilter, because when I hear the word quilter, I think of someone who exchanges money for quilts. It's a profession, it's monetized. My mama was not that. She had no money. She made no money, but she took care of everybody else. And so she went to the church and she got anybody's clothes that they were gonna throw away. Anybody's clothes that they couldn't wear anymore, they couldn't sell, they couldn't give it away. The trash clothes. And so Mama would bring the trash clothes home and she'd cut them up in little tiny pieces and she'd hand sew quilts. And I thought they were the most, oh, I've got chills. I don't want to cry on the stage. But it was the most beautiful, and still is the most beautiful possession of my life, right? So that was the first artist who inspired me. When I think about more modern artists who inspire me as a musician, Michael DeBelfay, he's a blues artist, but he doesn't get paid. He's a single dad who has a severely autistic son who's nonverbal, and the mom stepped out when they got the diagnosis as like 2 years old. And so he could have toured the whole world, but he's at home taking care of his son full time, who requires absolutely 24/7 care. But I got to sit in there and listen to him play that guitar in his bedroom, and it was like, it's his reprieve. It's the one part of his day that's actually his. And I've never, again, man, artists, they have a thing, don't they? They make us move. To hear him play music for no audience, for no money, simply for the passion of expression, to feel like he has a life. And that little 15 minutes every night that he gets for his time to play music is the most powerful music I've ever experienced in my life. So the third artist that came to mind is a kid that I took pictures of last year, a senior, like a high school senior, 17-year-old kid who grew up without much at all. However, he's got one of the richest hearts I've met. He makes knives, he makes axes, he colors his clothes with walnuts because they can't afford, other stuff. He's inventive, he's adaptive. But what resources does this kid have except his imagination and what he can find in nature? These are my most inspiring artists. And so when I think about these three artists and what they have in common, they're not getting paid for their art. They're making art and creating because it's oxygen to their lungs. And that kind of art, that kind of creation changes the world. And it's not in the spotlight, it's in the shadows, it's in the corners, it's in the hollers that we never see or hear or know about. But in my mind, in my opinion, it's the most profound, rich depth of art in Appalachia. And so for me, ultimately, if I narrow it down into a single sentence, Appalachian art is not performative, it is necessity.
Again, wow. Yeah, I was born in 1947 in West London in the aftermath of World War II, and I was just thinking about this last night that the world that I grew up in, even though I grew up in a middle-class family in that time, was very different from most mainstream middle-class Americans and what they experienced in the same period of time. I mean, we didn't end all food rationing until 1954 when I was 7 years old. My experience of being in here and especially further, Morehead is kind of an island of prosperity in an area that is much less so. But the similarity between, but I was thinking about what I grew up with as being a happy time. We were less acquisitive than I think people are today, and I recognize now that there's a real similarity between what I remember experiencing and what people in eastern Kentucky and north and southeastern Kentucky lived through, as I have discovered in the years of my working with artists outside of myself. I mean, I was a potter for about 15 years, and that's what brought me here. Thank you to the Kentucky Arts Council. As I said, I came here for 2 years, and then I was going to be, you'd see me dust. I'll be leaving town a cloud of dust, and here I am, 49 years later. And I lucked into exposure to some self-taught artists that led me into I knew, everybody else knew even less than I did about folk art at the time, so I kind of had an opportunity, and that opportunity led me to be able to go out and find people who were doing extraordinary things. And it was most, I mean, I've had a charmed life, to be honest with you, and it hasn't been so much by making things out of clay as it has been the experiences that I've had meeting people, because I found this resourcefulness that others have talked about is just like core. People from all kinds of walks of life, people who fought in World War II, from a guy that was, I encountered somebody who, and got to know very well, a man in Fleming County who liberated Auschwitz. He was a soldier. I kind of almost choked up talking about this. And then these are sort of educated people. A guy that made walking sticks, who was in military intelligence in Southeast Asia during World War II. And on the other end of the spectrum, Charlie and Noah Kinney, who were born in 1906 and 1912, and remembered seeing the first car coming up the valley. And in the 1970s, when I first met them, electricity was only a very recent addition to their world. But both those guys were, one of them was a painter and the other one was a sculptor, making things out of nothing, and work that ends up being in major museums today because people had the opportunity to see what there was in their work. And my feeling again is that what distinguishes Appalachian art is that resilience and that inventiveness of being able to think about doing something, making something out of nothing. And it's kind of catching. They just tore down 4 houses around my neighborhood. I live just over here near the university, and there's a lot of construction going on. I had the good fortune to be able to go over and pillage a bunch of materials from those houses that now sits in my backyard. So I can continue doing that. And that's just a form of what we do when we have things. and the drive to be able to, or to make ourselves feel happy by involvement in that. And, you know, I mentioned earlier that the making of it and the experiencing of it are very different things. A few years back when I was working at the Folk Arts Center, I did an exhibition one time. I can't even really remember what the title of this particular one was, but the lead up to it was that I interviewed all these artists whose work was in the show and in depth, and there was really a common theme that came out, which was, I mean, the one commonality that I think stretched to everybody was that the doing of it, the experience of the doing of it, was ultimately the real payback. It wasn't whether you sold it or what it even looked like when you got done. It was the process of discovery, of self-discovery, of learning something that you didn't know before about yourself and about the world. And to me, I see that, you know, I think there are some advantages and disadvantages to talking about Appalachian art as Appalachian art, because you don't want it to be consigned to some category of regionalism. I mean, we have that in literature, right? I mean, absolutely. And it's, you know, music has gone beyond that. I mean, popular music or traditional music has gone beyond that because it blends out into the community. But literature and art that sort of relates very specifically to the region, they are metaphors that are drawn from the region, but they're not. Yeah, it's like I said, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening.
If you guys aren't familiar with his work, you need to look it up. I think he's a master at what he does, and his work could be displayed anywhere in any museum in this world. It's a pleasure to be sitting next to you.
Okay, there are many varieties of art in Rowan County which help identify us as a regional arts center. What are your suggestions for unifying the arts community?
I mean, first off, something like this, you know, we have something coming up that's going to start to do that. I believe that we need to be more open to the idea of having these public places where we can talk about art, where we can have and feel free to express art wherever we can. I believe that art is organic and sporadic, and we need a community that, and like this one is doing that. You can feel it changing, you can feel it growing, and we know that we're on the cusp of something. And what this is going to do is you just need a foundation like this of a group of people that can support artists. So for example, me and my wife Courtney, we started Sawstone Poets. And the thing was that I really enjoy people coming and reading their poetry, but the thing that I found the most is that I'm amazed of the different types of poets that come in and the talent that we have. Like there's one guy that does not like for me to say this, but I call him the Appalachian Robert Frost. He will read and everybody will close their books not to share anymore because it's so good. And I believe that if we build a foundation like that, people will come and they will build and they will perform and they will display their art, and it will allow us to grow and we can have conversations. And I think if we have that, we can change how things work and we can change our perspective on mostly.
Do you ever have open readings, like open mic nights with the Sawstone Poets?
Every time is an open mic. So what we do is I usually have, if I'm being lazy, I have somebody come in and give a small poetry lesson, right, for about an hour.
Those nights I was there, and then I overheard somebody saying, "Who's that guy with the fake English accent?" Fast forward to when I began working at the university, and we produced our first traveling exhibition, which was done with outside help, but I wrote the text, the essay, and it was, I think there were like 10 or 12 artists from Eastern Kentucky in this thing. And I got, we produced this beautiful printed catalog, black and white printed catalog with some color illustrations. But anyway, copies of it got around, and there was a poet by the name of Jonathan Williams, who was from, I think, North Carolina, but associated with some friends of mine, and managed to get hold of a copy. And he wrote a letter to me, not knowing me, saying, complimenting me on it, and saying how much he really enjoyed my spare Kentucky prose. And I thought, okay, I've got there, you know. There's been, I've been here long enough now to, I got welcomed by Dr. Ewell Scott, who passed away a little over a year ago, but was a mainstay in the medical community here for years. I got welcomed by him and his wife when I first moved here, and came to find that he was a kind of a force to be reckoned with. He is one of the prime movers behind the establishment of the Morehead Symphony Orchestra. But going way back, there was a thing called the Morehead Arts Council, which eventually evolved into a performing arts series and so on. There have been things that have been happening here for a long time. How you I don't know if it's possible to pull those things together. I understand that things are, it is somewhat fragmented, but in a sense, that's a way to strive. It bothers me, and I'm trying to do something about it on my own, but it bothers me that I don't know about everything that's going on, because we've lost some of the sources of information that we had. We don't have a local newspaper that's really a local newspaper anymore, and our public radio station, wonderful as it is, has had to sort of pare itself down because its support has dwindled. I think one of the things that bothers me most today is that we're still litigating the same issues with education. The science is not in doubt. Science is probably not the right word, but the research is not in doubt in terms of the arts being really essential to the development of a whole individual. We are better people for it. We are, and luckily I grew up with some art classes. I mean, it wasn't making me an artist, that wasn't the point. But the arts infuse life into you because it tells you that there aren't always right and wrong answers, and this is the side of our world, the intuitive side of our world that does not get tapped into or does not get developed if we don't have art, music, theater, literature in our schools. Those are the things that we strive for. As far as bringing it all together, I think if we had brought it all together, it might rather be like we'd already done it, and maybe it'll take on a life of its own, but I think we just keep striving.
We have roughly 5 minutes left on the panel, so I want to open it up to those of you who've been listening to us. Do you have any questions, thoughts, comments for anyone on the panel? Yes, ma'am.
Would you all talk about anything dangerous or controversial that you have made? Any art that got you in trouble? Conflict? How did you deal with it? Anything in that realm? Danger and controversy.
That is a spicy question. Well, Rux. In my photography, I'm also a boudoir photographer, and I was kind of known for my boudoir work. And I've done some boudoir on the streets of Paris, and that was scary and challenging. I was afraid we were going to get arrested in another country. I've done some work, which, I think the thing for artists, we view the human body different, like it's the most beautiful thing in the whole wide world. Why shouldn't we be celebrating it? It is a sexual stressful thing, but it is also the source of life. It's the reason we're all here, right? It's the human body. So as an artist, we tend to view it as art, and that I'm very comfortable with viewing the human body as art rather than something that needs to be shameful. And so, and some of my photo shoots have gotten me into trouble in certain places. So that's my extent of my dangerousness. What did you guys? You're dangerous.
I remember running into Garland Atkins, was the late now dead for a long time, but the husband of a folk artist named Minnie Atkins, her long-term husband, and running into them at the old Walmart, and him saying, and we knew each other probably well. No telling who you run into when you go out without a gun. But I traveled all over. People would say, "Aren't you worried? Traveling around in southeast Kentucky?" No. I mean, I think a lot of times how you go is how people see you, and if you're not angry and confrontational, but want to listen to people want to be heard. And so, for me, that was a joyous experience to be able to get out of here. And I mean, especially early on in my job, because I got to really sort of design this job. It didn't exist before I it was a developmental thing. I never felt threatened, so I really don't have an answer to your question about danger.
Can I counter question you? Like, do you have something in specific? I'm curious where your question came from in your own life experience. If you want to.
I'm genuinely curious about your work, and you've talked in very we've had a lot of celebration of the arts, and I am an artist, and I believe in that. And I'm just curious I'm curious about your work, and if anything that you do is controversial, dangerous, pisses people off, or ever has.
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer other than just moderating, but I will say I have never gotten in trouble, but I've done things that very much could have, and I was prepared for that. And a couple examples I will give is, there was one year when I was in charge of our touring theater company at MSU, and at the time it went to elementary schools. I think they largely go to high schools now. And I held auditions in December, and we were getting to work in the spring semester. And in that time, between December and late January when we came back, one of my cast members, who was a man, came back as a woman. And this was early aught, so maybe 2007, 8, somewhere in there. There's a lot more conversation and openness about that, which is kind of sad when I say a lot more openness. Nonetheless, there is more openness. I was very scared. Of course, I talked to my chair. I talked to the university council about how to handle this situation, and do we move forward? I think, theater students by and large are very open, but it even threw some of them for a little bit of a curve. It was just something that had never happened, that they hadn't experienced. So that was scary, and we did take her out to elementary schools throughout Eastern Kentucky, and I was constantly waiting for an angry email, a mean parent, never happened. But I was ready, and I would have dug my heels in. But the other situation is when I was coaching the speech team at the high school I did that for 4 years. They want to talk about things, and Frankfurt tells us we're not allowed to talk about things. And that put me in a real, it was a strange position to feel like my job is to teach them to talk about what they want to talk about in an effective way, but they're telling me I can't, right? And so I really decided that as long as I had their parents' backing, I was gonna let these kids talk about what they wanted to talk about. I can't win a fight with parents. I don't particularly want to fight with Frankfurt, but I will, if it's for my students. And I told them that. I said, you know, you're gonna do this speech on being gay in Appalachia and you're 16. And it could not get you in trouble, it could get me in trouble. And I'm okay with that. I'm not telling you to change your topic. I just want you to know it could be coming. There was a black student I had who told me, now I'm gonna get a little bit like Chrissy, and then I was the first teacher she ever had who let her be black. And I gave her writers who she had never heard of. She didn't know Billie Holiday. She can sing. And so I gave her a piece where, you know, there was singing in it. Who's this? So it was, and some of her poetry pieces, she didn't write them, but found pieces, performed them, were bold. And there were some judges that, and I had a couple of feminist pieces too. Those were the ones actually that got more pushback from judges than the gay Appalachian or the young black lady. Yeah, there was a lot of, her piece was about women's health and how it's just not researched enough, and she talked about period things, and you know, and the judges, some of them would say, like, this is disgusting, I'm a father of a teenage girl and I don't want to talk about this, and of course we kind of laughed about it, like, well, that was literally the point of this whole speech, is that nobody wants to talk about it, but we have to. So I do think, even if none of us like have been embroiled in controversy, I think many of us, I'm not inviting it. I mean, I don't want it. My husband and I dealt with some controversies several years ago with the Kim Davis situation, and I'm done with controversy. I don't want people at my house anymore. But if I have to for my students, I will. So that's my answer.
I got looped up into the world of bluegrass sort of accidentally through college. I won an award for the International Bluegrass Music Association. Most of my music is, if you have ever heard it, it's like folk meets electronica about like cats and buckets and stuff. There's not like, I mean, I like to write about things of great emotional depth as well. I don't subscribe to any particular genre, but I got so ingrained in the world of bluegrass because of that award, and then you go into school here, that it was really hard to play anything I actually wanted to play. And so I would frequently end up on like bluegrass radio, and it was like a really big issue trying to play anything, you know, with an electric guitar, or you know, having to argue with someone to have drums on stage, or any kind of art music, which I really particularly love. It's weirdly difficult to perform outside of a couple different genres. So that's the closest I've ever been.
I've not been, I don't think, too close. I flirt with the line, but I do believe that all art does that anyways. We cross the line at different parts, and we push it, we push the boundaries. Mine's more getting people to explore different things. One of the things that I tell all of my writing students is they tell me something that they want to write, and they're like, I can't. And I'm like, is it because your parent is still alive? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, then you have a dead parent story or poem. And I think that's what personally I've done, is I've decided to, doesn't matter if that person's alive or not, I'm going to write about it. And I think the strangest thing that ever happened, that I was afraid that I was in trouble, is I was just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw a picture of a radio, somebody's campfire in their shoe. And I was like, I'm gonna write a poem about that. So I did. Didn't title it, didn't allude to the picture, didn't do anything. I wrote it, posted it, moved on with my life. And then I get a message from that person, and they're like, "Was that poem about me?" And I was really scared because I didn't know, like I just made assumptions, right? But I was right about all of them. And it was really scary for a moment, and I was like, yes? And it turned out well, but that was the scariest moment so far. But yeah.
I did remember, you reminded me that you were talking about writing about people, which took me to David Sedaris, because he writes so much about his family. And that was another controversial. I gave a student a David Sedaris piece, and one of the other competitors said that I was a disgrace to the whole human race.
Oh.
Because I would give my student the piece was called The Faithful Setter. It's a short story by Sedaris, and it's about a dog who is a breeder, and so he has to go out, for stud, but he's also married to another dog, and is this cheap and all that. And so the thing was like giving a piece about dog sex, which was of course not what the piece was about. So, disgrace to the whole human race.
Should frame that.
Any other questions? You guys have been a great audience. Thank you. So open and vulnerable and informative.